I'd like to continue that transition now to how do we take the wow factor of the Internet of Everything and turn it into what do we actually do? And who better to describe how we can access and combine those changes into meaningful steps in education than Clarke Porter. I'm going to read you his bio because I've read his speech and he doesn't praise himself or pat himself on the back at all, so I'm going to do it real quick. Clarke Porter has been an innovative leader in the electronic testing industry since its inception. At Control Data Corp, he developed the industry's first commercial computer-based testing system to deliver on-demand exams for, I believe it's the stock exchange, is that it was? Yeah. And professional testing centers. Clarke was the founding employee and president of the certification division of Drake Training Technologies, now Prometric, that deployed revolutionary client-server architecture and widely accessible, cost-effective global computer-based training infrastructure. Clarke partnered with Novell to pioneer the certification for IT professionals and played a key role in the development of CompTIA's A+ program, setting new standards that facilitated the growth of the multi-billion-dollar IT certification market. You mean there's money in that stuff? A few bucks. He also instituted an annual conference for CBT professionals that paved the way for the later creation of ATP. As co-founder, CEO, and chairman of View, now Pearson View, Clarke led the company in harnessing the internet to create innovative testing models and a comprehensive dynamic that fueled industry growth. Following View's acquisition by NCS, Clarke was appointed president NCS View. And while at View, Clarke served on the standards committee of ATP and contributed to the strategy for creating its Innovations in Testing Conference, the standard for collaboration among industry professionals that has spurred the subsequent creation of eATP and AATP. Clarke was also co-founder, CEO, and chairman of Integral 7, providing credential management services to certification licensure programs. After Integral 7's acquisition by Pearson View, Clarke was made VP General Manager of Pearson's Credential Management. Clarke is an active member of eATP Steering Committee and presenter at ATP and ICE Conference Chair for Information Technology Council's Job Task Force. Clarke's currently responsible for the Pan-Pearson Badging Initiative, ACCLAIM. ACCLAIM's intent is to create an ecosystem of millions of learners by issuing them open badges with their verified skills. ACCLAIM will use labor market intelligence to identify the skills needed for the evolving workforce and provide real-time feedback loop of learning and certification designers about how their products are performing. ACCLAIM will then map the verified skills demonstrated by aspiring professionals to available jobs or additional career development opportunities. Like many of the other initiatives of Clarke's career, ACCLAIM will deploy modern technology to streamline otherwise cumbersome processes and introduce the immediacy expected by today's learners and professionals. And if that doesn't start to close the gap on changing the old institution of education and into this more disruptive technology model, I don't know what does. Please help me in welcoming an innovative leader and visionary, Clarke Porter.
Well, I'll try to follow Howard's lead and rove around a little bit. I see why you kept moving over here because the light is bright if you're over this way. I had a friend of mine that helped me put things in context sometimes. And I was just chatting with him about the invitation to come to California and be with you guys. He said, I don't know why in the world you wouldn't want to do that because don't forget it's 55 degrees warmer in your freezer than it is outside in Minneapolis right now. And it is pretty startling when you think about the relative temperatures there. So before we really get wound into the talk, I have a survey. And it seems like everybody's going to raise their hand, but I just want to find out from you guys. Raise your hand if you think there is a talent gap. And what I mean by that is that employers have a hard time, particularly in IT, finding the people they need to fill their jobs. So if you think that's a problem, raise your hand. So one of the things I want you to do, I know that you all have various methods for keeping secret notes. It might be a tablet or an iPhone. I'd like you to make a guess. how many IT professionals we've all created in the decade starting in 2002. Because like all of you, I have a couple slides with data on them, and I have the answer to this. So a little later, we'll let you see how close you got. How many IT professionals have we created? And I'd like to limit it to North America. In North America from 2002 and for one decade, in 10 years. So I'd like to give you a little further background and tell a story about how I got going. I like many people in business, started out in college. And I was destined, I think, to get a PhD in mathematics. But I was still an undergraduate, and one day someone from the placement office came to me and said, well, I have a great opportunity for you. We have found a job for you at Control Data Corporation. And we think you ought to really take it because they're doing some really cutting edge work. So this is Silicon Valley. I think I have a shot at getting some people that remember Control Data Corporation. Does anyone remember Control Data Corporation? That is great. And you know, it's interesting because you could know Control Data Corporation as a mainframe company. You might know it as a storage device company. You could know it as a bank or as an education company. Because it, in fact, was all of those things to many people. And when I got this internship or this part-time job, I went to work and I got to go work on a project they called the Plato Project, which was Bill Norris's vision that he would bring computer-based education with a learning library into everyone's home. And that someday you would be able to go onto a computer terminal and you would be able to find out the information you needed to move along in your life. Now, that was in 1975 when he set out that vision. And I will tell you that this is important because I really didn't know how to do anything when I took this part-time job. They were looking for a test center, like a learning center administrator who would check people in and get them their learning booklets and show them how to sign on to the terminal. So they taught me how to do that. And it was very early on, and no one really ever came in to these centers. I mean, they were beautiful. They were all over the United States in major cities. The one I worked in was in Baltimore, and day after day I was waiting for someone to come in and let me check them in, but no one came in. So I called the person that hired me and I said, no, I'm really bored and I need something to do. I was a TA, so I graded papers and I was making a lot of money because they paid me, the school was paying me, but I still finished up on my work and was really just deathly. So they said, well, we have this curriculum online where you can learn how to program the Plato computer, and I did it. So I was industrious, and I took advantage of this opportunity, and I learned how to code Plato. I became a coder, and I raised my hand and said, can you send me a project? I'm still bored. I learned how to do it. I need to try things. And eventually they sent me little projects to do, and I would code them up. So I couldn't get over it. I couldn't get over a Plato computer because at my school, if you wanted to write a program, you had to really fight to get computer time. I had to punch cards. I mean, even I would save things and run them out on that paper tape thing, and then you have to load it back in. And here I had a time-sharing terminal at Control Data. It was a 512 by 512 terminal with graphics with a line editor. I had permanent files. I was mesmerized by what I could do. So I said, well, I don't really need a PhD in math. I'm just going to stay, and I'm going to do this. And eventually they said, well, we have the stockbrokers. And the stockbrokers wanted to change the way they deliver tests. It was kind of their idea, but they looked at these beautiful centers we had in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, all the major centers, and they said, we'd like to figure out how to give our stockbrokers tests in those centers so they could do it right away. Now, I've been doing testing, and I will tell you that in the old world, which is still a little bit present, the way you would take a standardized test is you would get some form, you would fill it out, you would mail it in to apply. It would take some weeks. You would pick maybe a big group delivery session. It could be at a high school gym or a college place or someplace. You would show up, they'd hand out the bubble sheets and the test booklets and the pencils, and you fill it all in and take your test. And then they would box them all up, and you put little barcode stickers on, whatever they did to track them, and send them off to a storage facility. And eventually, some weeks or months later, you would get your results. So in the stockbroker world, you have to be licensed to be a stockbroker. It's a rule. So you can't really go to work until you pass the test. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon. And this process, this is what the stockbrokers were trying to eliminate, it was really inefficient because it took a long time. And imagine what would happen if you failed the test. First, when you failed the test, you had to start over to take it again, and so then you were many more months. So it was just really inefficient. So by using these Plato centers, we were able to change the business model really significantly in this space. You could actually call in the morning, test in the afternoon, right on the screen. You would answer the questions on the screen. You would walk out with a provisional report of your test. The Plato computer would connect up and shoot this information to the SEC the next night. And essentially, you could go to work the next day. And if you failed the test, you could sign up in a couple days and take it again. Now, the test givers are smart. They don't let you keep doing that retesting thing over and over again, but you could get like one shot really fast to go back in. So what I want to tell you is that we use infrastructure. And part of my theme today is really we're all building infrastructure in some way. So we use this Plato infrastructure. It had people, testing centers, mainframe computers, and everything was connected. But it was connected by telephone lines. And Howard was here talking about TCP/IP, and we had muxes and modems, and we did all that. And in fact, I was in sales support for a while, and we used to carry these terminals around. They weighed 150 pounds. We called them portable. So it wasn't exactly how we see today, but we would schlep them around, have a little acoustic coupler to connect them up. So this infrastructure, though, at the time for stockbrokers, let us change the way business was done. Before we had the infrastructure with the applications, the mainframes, the centers, the people, we couldn't do it this way, and then we could. And it kind of suited that market. And it was something, I call it now, we call it like Google-esque, because as soon as we turned this on, this service on, stockbrokers used it immediately. And thousands of stockbrokers every day came in to challenge this test. It became the very highest volume thing Plato ever did, because it still had the problem where people weren't really coming in to buy learning on computers, but they really loved buying testing on the computers. So that was a big success, and oftentimes when you get a big success, people tap you on the shoulder and say, let's have you do something else. And so I was in my nice warm East Coast house in Baltimore, and they said, let's move you to Minneapolis for an opportunity. And the opportunity was to help Control Data launch into the microcomputer learning business. So they were actually building their own microcomputers, and they were going to market them and put 8-inch floppy CDs into them, and you could take learning not connected to the computer because they were trying to drive the cost down. Now, interestingly, I kept going into our group president saying, we needed this and we needed that, and we have to market more, and we have to convert the courser faster and all these things, because I was one of the leaders. And time after time, you had a little Napoleon complex. It was a lot like this. You would say, I don't know why you keep coming here bothering about this. We've hired you. We're sticking our toe in the water. We're a mainframe company. We don't really think these microcomputers go anywhere. So just get out and stop bothering me. Go and do the best you can with what you got. And that happened over and over again. It makes me wonder why maybe half of you didn't know who Control Data was, because they weren't really sticking up for all that they could. So eventually, CDC, they got into all their troubles, and we had a chance to spin out. I stayed insanely involved in technology. I am a really passionate technologist. I'm a very passionate learner. I love building infrastructure. I love working in Control Data. But they spun us out, and because of all the learning they had given me, and I'll tell you, they were a fascinating place to go, I was able to start 3 companies, Prometric, View, and Interval 7, and they're all just clipping along now to their various levels of greatness. Some people here have complained to me about one or the other companies in the last day, so I won't say how great they are, just to their greatness. Well, there's supposed to be slides up here. You want to look back at the, I'll try again. Ah, well that's a good one. Let me try to back up one. I'm just gonna be, maybe back up another one. This is what happens when you rely on a fancy IT department. Oh, that's the answer to the question. We don't want the question yet. I guess we're not going to get the fancy graphic that's in there. I want to emphasize a few of the things that Howard has said about the Internet of Everything. And I did chat with him a bit at coffee hour because I said I wanted to make sure that we weren't like totally contradicting each other. And I told him about this exponential growth in computing. So, one of the things, being a math guy, by the way, I told you I was a math guy because I was thinking about doing a PhD. I've grabbed onto this idea of Moore's Law. And do you know what Moore's Law is? I used to think it was, computers get twice as fast at half the cost every 2 years. It isn't really exactly that. What it really says is you can pack in twice as many like resistors on the same space every 2 years. But to my purpose, what Moore's Law means is computer stuff gets twice as powerful, twice as fast, twice as pervasive, twice as complicated every 2 years, and costs like half as much. And when you look at it, and all the things Howard showed you, it's really true. I mean, it's everywhere. Technology and applications are becoming totally embedded in our lives. I mean, you can barely make a move without it. I agree. I often work remotely, and if the internet is down or I can't get a connection, I really can't work because I'm doing video conferences and checking email and accessing systems. So we really have become quite entrenched in the technology that's there today. The thing that seems striking to me is the human capital that we need to support it, to write the applications, install the applications, support the applications, and I think more importantly, connect all the applications together. The human capital does not grow twice as fast, get twice as smart, and earn half as much every 2 years. That doesn't happen. So if you think Moore's Law might kind of describe what is going on with the people, like it describes what's going on with the IT, we have a huge problem because we're going to need more and more people to take care of business, to make this connected world we live in work so much better. So my premise today is there really is a talent gap. If I was a mathematician, I could probably compute it using Moore's Law and some other interesting laws we might dig up. So we have a talent gap because we don't have enough people. It's a thin idea. 2, people aren't so interested in IT. I was going to say that IT wasn't sexy, and I was sort of talking through some of the talk points with my family, and they said, well, that's not really true. IT is really sexy. I mean, you can have a huge impact. I certainly felt like I had a huge impact when I did the stockbroker project. I mean, just think about it. People used to have to wait maybe 3 to 6 months to get their job, and if they failed, they didn't have a chance to recover. And I helped fix that. I mean, I was part of a team that made that so that all happened really fast. It felt like a huge impact. Immediately, people started popping in. When you go to work for Google and you release some little app or Facebook and you suddenly see it and millions of people are able to give the like. I heard someone invented like, and that like the first day there were 100 million likes that happened right after they put that technology into service. You feel like you've had a big impact. You can see a lot of action. And that was someone that they told me at Facebook, that the guy that did that, he was so excited because he got so many likes on it. So I think it is sexy. What I think is people, they're a little afraid of STEM, so you start talking about what you have to do. They don't really know what they're going to get. They don't know the kind of jobs they can have. They're scared. So I don't think that it's not sexy. I think people don't know how cool it is, and they don't know how getting into IT, how they can have a huge impact and have a great career, whatever that means to them, and lots of pathways. And I think the third thing, and one of the things I'm going to dwell on as we go through here a little bit, is it's hard to find the talent. You go to school and you acquire certain skills, but it's not easy to like Google search them. So something happened Christmas Eve for me. My family wanted chocolate souffles. I'm the cook. And by the way, Eddie told me that wasn't one of the hobbies you might necessarily want to highlight unless you were really good at it, because I was sitting in his session about talent selection. I do have a little bit of a funny story about that. I had friends visiting, and they knew Wolfgang Puck. And their son was having a birthday party at my house, and I said, oh, I'll cook, because this way, Wolfgang Puck was supposed to come, he would get to eat my food, and I could become a famous cook. So I did all the work, I cooked, and of course we had a blizzard, no Wolfgang Puck. But all the people got my extra super spicy chicken curry. So anyway, on Christmas Eve, they wanted chocolate souffles. I went in, I Googled best chocolate souffle. I got, pages of hits, and I saw one, Jeffrey Sakarian. He's one of my favorite chefs because he's frequently a judge on Chopped. And so I got his recipe. And I thought, wouldn't it be kind of neat if you needed talent, if you needed to find just that right person, if you could kind of Google them the same way. But there's stuff that on the internet that isn't there yet, that you would really need to make that happen in the right way. So it's harder to do that, but I was thinking, that would be cool if we could make that happen. So that's one of the things I'm gonna work on. So now, I want to talk about Novell a bit. Novell is a really interesting story because if you wind the clock back to the late 80s and 90s, they make a great case study of what we've been talking about on the talent gap. And what Novell convinced me of was if you don't have the right talent, it could really hurt your business. So business is aligned with us as talent creators to get the right talent. So the thing that was interesting about Novell is they were the leading network provider. So they sold networks, they let you connect your computers together for collaboration, and they let you have shared services like printers. And in the late 80s and early 90s, their sales were going through the roof. I mean, they just couldn't keep a lid on it. In fact, I noticed yesterday, might have been Steve Wright, could be the guilty person here. I think you put a slide up that said one of the top certifications was Novell CNE. Still, he was the very last top one, but it was the last top one. So today they aren't the network leader anymore, but their certification is still one of the ones that people call out and need, and it was driven by this growth. So what Control Data said was, well, they were getting a bad rap. Very bad rap from their clients. And so why were they getting a bad rap? They were the leader, they were selling stuff faster than they could print it up. Well, they were getting a bad rap because it took too long to get it installed. And when people called in for problems, they would get on the Novell hotline for hours because there weren't enough people fielding those calls. It was huge. So they had the very best product, it was going gangbusters, they were in trouble on client satisfaction. So they called us at Control Data and they said, can you come and look into this for us? So we studied. We charged them a lot for the study. I'm sure we probably charged them $200,000 or something. And at the end of the day, we came back and said, guess what? You don't have enough people to support your product. This is your problem. You've been overly successful and there just aren't enough people. And then we made a series of recommendations so that we could sell them more stuff, because that's what really good consultants always do. So the thing we said is, well, how do we go get more people? And remember, we're back in the day, and they said, well, it's probably about training and education, but what we had to do was get an army of trainers, and we had to get a way that we could mobilize that army. So we did job task analysis. We identified career pathways that were needed for setting up the right people. What jobs, what tasks, what training. So we did all that. We made certification tracks. So we said, well, you could be an engineer, an administrator, and this and that, different levels. We developed tests that could prove it. And then a few miracles kind of happened. We announced all that. Novell said, well, I'm gonna go out to my resellers. They, like a lot of IT companies, use resellers and distributors to get their products out in the marketplace. And we're going to say, if you want to continue being one of our partners, you have to get trained. You have to find trained people. Here's a roadmap of how you get it done. This is what they need. And all you need to do is have them pass these certifications to prove to us you've got them, and you can stay being a partner. So Novell figured out what was needed, and who else better to know than the people that made all this stuff, working with the employers. They made requirements that you create such people. That was, we call it the carrot and stick model. That was the stick. They said if you didn't do it, you couldn't sell. And then they went to work at training. So they had a couple ways. I will say that the learning environment kind of blossomed here. The first way was to make sure they had some capacity. They had their own learning centers. They had Novell Education Centers. The second thing they did is they took this very same roadmap they were sharing with everyone, and they made their own training courses. And they put it in beautiful, red boxes, Novell authorized, Novell approved, excellent high quality, and they made Novell authorized education centers. And off they went. And they had a lot of Novell authorized education centers, maybe 50 Novell education centers, maybe 1,000 Novell authorized education centers, and they just went gangbusters delivering. But another kind of interesting thing happened. Other training organizations started using the same roadmap to fill in the gaps. So they were making their own courseware. It wasn't in the fancy red box, but they used the same learning objectives. The people still passed the same tests. And Novell, I think, was smart because he said, all we really care about is getting the talent out in the marketplace. We need talent to support. If you can pass the test, we don't care if you took training, if you learned it on the job, if you learned it from a community college, a other kind of partner, an authorized partner, or from us. Just go out and get the test. So interestingly, the talent gap kind of bugged them. They had to make a contract with us at Control Data, which later this became Drake and now is Prometric. And they had to guarantee us they would find 1,000 people in the first year that would go get certified. And they were sweating bullets because it was hard to find them. But they had a little bravery and they signed up. So they had trouble. This first year there was trouble getting 1,000. But then people, employers, professionals, students started seeing, oh, you could get a job. And yes, I need to have it to meet my requirements. And so it started building up. Soon there were thousands a month. And then other IT vendors and manufacturers started taking note. So I think the next person that took note was Ashton Kate. They're out of business, so we're going to just hop over them. But Microsoft, Cisco, Sun, IBM, all these IT manufacturers that had similar products said, this thing that Novell's getting going, that makes a lot of sense to us, and we're going to do it. They all put a little twist on it. Some had their own proprietary parts, but they evolved and really started getting thousands and thousands of people taking certification. So now I think we can answer the question. Some of you might have peeked when the other slide goes up, but if I'm not too rattled, I think the next slide is the answer to the quiz question, the survey question. How many IT professionals have we created in the decade starting in 2002? So how many of you think it's 1 million or less? Okay, that's pretty good. How many of you think it's more than 3 million? How many think it's in between 1 and 3 million? Pretty good. So it is, in fact, what do you think? 1.2 million. 1.2 million. And what I think, and what I want to say is, we have done a great job at developing IT professionals. I think that is a really excellent outcome.
Does that data include like information workers, like Microsoft can define anybody using Office products as?
It includes these job categories over here. I'm not sure it includes like Microsoft Office
I was
categories.
gonna say desktop applications would
Yep.
magnify their.
Yep, it would blow it up a bit, but these are like the installers, engineers, support technicians, the little higher, I think higher level skills. Let's just look through there and make sure I'm answering correctly. Yes, yes. So I think this is a good outcome. I tried to do a calculation, by the way, to say, did the gap get worse or better in this time period? And I reached out to Burning Glass and Wanted and a couple other labor market analytics companies, and unfortunately they said, we don't have the longitudinal data to answer that question. They all have a how hard is it to hire people right now, but they don't have the how hard was it to hire them every year for the last 10 years. What I can tell you though is it is hard to hire our IT people right now. It is still a daunting task. So I think we should pat ourselves on the back for good progress in recruiting people. And if we could have had the fancy animated graph, you would have seen an exponential graph on the explosion of devices, which I think might be a proxy for the need of certified IT professionals. This is another fancy animation that's going to get me in trouble, I see. Okay. This section is talking about a survey we did at Pearson VUE. So, we work with, I don't know how many of you really are familiar with Pearson VUE, but Pearson VUE works with almost all the major IT companies, almost all of the IT companies to administer their certification programs. So what we did this summer, this is very recent data, is we surveyed 30,000 test takers who had taken a test from one of the top 12 certification programs in the last 2 years, and we asked them a whole series of questions. So one of the things I would like to do is I'd like to be able to be in touch with you a little bit, because later on here I'm going to talk to you about a new initiative I'm working on, and I want to tell all of you about it, about digital badging. So I will trade you this very nice report and white paper about the value of IT certification according to this survey in exchange for your contact info. And I'm going to send it to you in a PDF, not in the old paper way. So if you deliver that to me, I'll get this for you. So one of my themes, Jamie is in the back, and she'll know my theme because we're on a lot of committees together. I said, well, why do people get certified? And I said, well, it really boils down to 3 reasons. They get certified because they want to get a job, keep a job, or get a better job. I mean, it's really kind of simple. It's all about jobs. People rarely just get it for fun. There was a very small, rounding to 0 percentage that just get certified for fun. That's not really why they get certified. They want to go out and get a job, keep a job, or get a better job. So in this survey of the 31,000 that we did, we said, why did you pursue certification? That was one of the questions. 34% of the people said they pursued certifications to get a job. That made me feel good. That feels like a high amount to me. 38%, I might be off a little bit on percentages because it was on the lovely chart. That's not fair. 38% said they got a promotion. So I'm going to put that in the category to get a better job. And 40% said they stayed in their job, but they got a raise. So I'm going to say that's keep a job. So I think the data in high numbers, over 60+% when you add it up, pursued certification to get a job, keep a job, or get a better job. And 70% said they pursued certification because it improved their professional reputation and asserted their idea. They wanted a better professional reputation. I have a couple other facts which I wrote down because they weren't on the slide, and I'm gonna give you a couple of highlights about that. 90%, and I think this is relevant too, 90% of the people in this survey said that they completed a training course, an instructor-led training course, and took 1.6 courses. They took instructor-led training and completed 1.6 training courses. So these people are working with all of us to get trained. This surprised me a little bit. 34% said they paid for the training themselves. 45% said their employers paid for the training. And the surprising part to me was only 5% said the government paid for the training. I thought that would be a little higher than it was. 70% of the people that answered our survey said that they wanted to take more instructor-led training in the next year. So there's a market for us to bring people into our programs and get it done. So the next part of the survey was really, well, what happened after I got certified? Not what did I expect to happen, but what did happen. 60% of the respondents said that the survey did in fact improve their image. They reported that. We said, so you had your expectation, what happened? About 70% either got a job, a promotion, or a raise. And here's another thing, I don't know if you think this is fast, but on the get a job, get a promotion, or get a raise, they said that happened within, anyone want to guess how many months after they finished their certification? 3 months. They got a result in 3 months. So that was another kind of surprising thing. Okay. I have some ideas, and I'm having a feeling that this other great animation that my team made is not going to work for you. So, imagine that there was this beautiful college campus up here, which is what it was, and there were students milling around, and they were happy and laughing and enjoying learning with you, and they were sort of from all walks of life. That was what you would be seeing right now. So I'm going to say, how can community colleges continue to play in the picture? And first, you know, when people when the team, I think Steve and James asked me, they said, well, maybe we're missing something in community colleges. You know, half of Pearson Views testing centers are located at community colleges. So this actually has surprised some of my colleagues when I asked them that, because they don't routinely report it. But they went and looked in and went, oh, well, there's been a shift, and there's really a lot going on. But when we went back to this Novell problem of trying to do the testing and get everyone on board, you know, we had the old Plato centers. There were only 100 of them. They were only in the US. And we had to expand that globally because Novell was global, and all the IT companies are global. So we had to find partners. And our partners were community colleges. Our very first set of partners at Drake Authorized Testing Centers were community colleges. Was anyone at Drake Authorized Testing Center here? Look, there's a couple. So see, I have evidence that was true. It was pretty cool. The other really cool thing about this global idea, and I know we've talked a lot about standardization, is that these IT credentials are globally transportable. And so, you know, yesterday when I was in some of the sessions, there was a theme of how do I do something at my community college and make it recognized by a bigger geography like the state, or maybe even, you know, the southern part of the state. So a really cool thing that the IT manufacturers did is they got these credentials that they made to be really portable across all boundaries, across the globe. That was really a cool thing. And I don't believe that these companies could have been successful without the infrastructure in place. So I think the stockbrokers were successful because we had the US Plato infrastructure in the cities where, you know, most stocks are sold. I think we were successful with our IT certification rollout because we partnered with community colleges and other training providers. We did it around the globe, and that was a critical enabler for them to help generate that 1.2 million people that got certified, so it was good. So now, what do community colleges do today? So you have the faculty, you have the local presence, you have the trust of the students, and I think the idea that the students trust you is really important. And I would say that, you know, certification really works. So I think one thing we could do immediately is help people understand that certification is a great route to find a job, get a job, or keep their job, to have interesting career paths, and to be able to be in a role where they can have an immediate impact. So a lot of times we think about what's something we could do today. I think just sharing this information and sharing the vision with our students is really a critical thing. I think the other thing that we all need is the IT manufacturers are trying to do more and more things virtually to roll out their programs. So yesterday I got to sit in the lab with NetApp, and we were learning how to set the clock and fix various things. And it struck me that I was sitting in a lab that had like 50 computer terminals in it. It was pretty cool. They were lined up, and there were people milling around to help me because, you know, I didn't know what the bejesus I was doing. And we had a few little issues, but I think the local presence of labs, it's a critical success factor. What employers tell us more and more is they want practical experience. They want internships, they want lab results, they want proof that the people not only know about this technology, but that they can do something. That's what Eddie was telling us in our writing. Say what you do, what you did. Say it boldly, what you did. So they want to say, you know, I configured the network, I set the passwords, I can do all those things. They want to know that. And you know, as much as we can do so much on the internet, there's nothing that is better than getting on the equipment, which is right here at the labs, at the community colleges. So self-certification more. It might be self-serving, but it's important. It's going to help your students. Let's get into the labs and let's help with internships and the connection with the local employer community. So the other big trend Pearson's seeing, so Pearson does almost testing, but the broader Pearson, of which we're a part, they saw a lot of learning. They're seeing a huge trend towards people wanting to customize and tailor their learning more to what's needed. So I think that being on the street and partnering with the employers to help customize and tailor is another thing that you can do by your presence. So these are all things to help with the being local and helping with the gap, because we want to get people into the training. How am I doing on time? Gotta go? I'm going to just wrap up and say that we have a really amazing digital badging project at Pearson called Acclaim. And the idea of it is that when you get a learning accomplishment or a certification that makes you ready for a job or that helps you get a job, we can digitally document that. And once we start digitally documenting, instead of just hanging the certificates on the wall, we're going to be able to Google for people, and we're going to be able to find just the set of skills we need as an employer. So with that, questions?